Like. Live at Met Office HQ here down in Exeter. This is your chance to ask us any questions you may have around the weather this week. Obviously, we are heading into some quite busy weather this week with Storm Darragh on its way. My name's Honor Criswick.
And I'm Alex Deakin. Yes, thank you very much for being there. Only really one story in town this week, isn't there?
Yes. Storm Darragh, we've got lots of Met Office warnings currently issued from today through into the weekend, which we'll be discussing. And we're going to go into the details of that for you here this afternoon.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're here for. We still want your questions, so please do get involved. It's all been a bit last minute this week. It's going to be a bit different to normal. Obviously, we issued a red warning this morning, so that is going to be the main focus, the main priority, but it's all been a little bit hectic this morning. So we're not going to have a quiz in today's Weather Studio Live, but we are going to go through the details of Darragh and try and answer as many questions as we can around this storm. Important to emphasise, yes, we have issued that red warning, but large parts of the UK. So if you're not in the red, not in the amber, you could still be seriously affected by Darragh. This is a very powerful storm that's coming in this weekend with the potential for some significant problems as well. So yeah, do keep up to date. You're doing the right thing by watching us here, but feel free to ping us any questions as well.
Yes, we've got lots of weather warnings, including wind. We have warnings for rain and also for snow in parts of Scotland too. So there's lots of different warnings, lots of different coloured warnings as well. So feel free to add in any questions you have around the warnings or the weather in the chat, and we'll try and answer as many as possible.
And if you're on, please just hit the like button, the thumbs up button. We were talking about likes last week, and we got a lot of likes, which was nice in the chat. But actually, if you could hit the thumbs up button and subscribe, if you haven't subscribed yet as well, but if you could hit that thumbs up button, then that shares the love. Because one thing we really want to do is let everyone know that we're on here, and let everyone know about the potential severity of this storm coming in. So you'll be doing everyone a favour, helping to keep everyone safe if you can share the love, let people know that we're on here. So yes, please hit that thumbs up button on this video, somewhere around about there, I think, if I look correctly. Yeah, give us that, and then that will let people know. It will boost the numbers, and more people will be aware. So that would be really helpful as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, have we got any questions so far? Let's have a look. Let's see. So how fast will the winds be around North Somerset, Bristol and Bath? We've got some questions about the rain, but mainly about wind, which is going to be the main hazard for this storm as it comes through. Really strong winds as it moves through. Could be between sort of 70, 80 miles per hour. And where we see that red warning, wind speeds could get up to around 90 miles per hour. So it's going to be very, very strong. It's going to be causing very large waves around coastal areas. So our advice is to stay away from coastal areas, and travelling in general probably best to avoid if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Storm Bert was a multi-hazard event, start of last week, where we had the heavy snow, the heavy rain and the winds. This one is, the focus is on the wind, but there are still rain and snow warnings in place for this. But the real focus for this is going to be the winds. That's what we've got the amber and the red warning in place for. Again, I'll go through the details in a second at the big board. And yeah, please don't go and take photos of the waves, because that is incredibly dangerous. Take advice from the RNLI, Coast Guard Agency as well. So there's lots of really useful advice on there. But the main advice, particularly in the amber or the red area, is just think about what your plans are for this weekend and change them accordingly. But even if you're in the yellow warning area, there are going to be issues. A lot of people out and about. It's a Saturday before Christmas. So again, just think about what your plans are. Make sure you're across the warnings. They're being tweaked all the time. The guys upstairs, the chief and the deputy chief forecaster, constantly looking at data as this Storm Darragh develops. And again, we'll go through it in a minute, just where and how it is developing. So yeah, warnings are constantly being monitored and checked. And so just make sure you're staying up to date yourself as well.
Yeah, there'll be updates on our website, and of course we'll try and update you all across our social media channels as well. So if you manage to see any of those, make sure to share it just so we can get that word across and keep people safe.
Dylan Coley, is there a chance that sting jets could form? It's kind of one of those systems where it's possible when we get these storms that a sting jet is where you get really strong gust of wind, a sudden influx of cold air from high down on the backside of this system. It's not really developing that quickly. It's not a classic sting jet, far from it. In fact, again, I'll go through it in a second, but it's more the pressure building behind it that's creating these strong winds. So I'd say a sting jet was unlikely, but you're right. It's these kind of storms that do often spin up a sting jet. So yeah, thanks for that question. Fiery night core, how bad in Yeovil, Somerset? Well, parts of Somerset are in the red warning area, the north coast of Somerset. I think Yeovil is probably in the amber warning area. Because of that further inland with those winds coming in, you're probably going to get gusts still 50, 60 miles an hour, possibly 70 miles an hour, depends how high up you are. So still the potential for some pretty serious conditions for you there. Messiah Mitchell, what's the likelihood of tornadoes forming? That's an interesting question. Again, not a classic setup for that. So obviously when we have these storms coming in, then they can always spawn them on the cold front, but I don't think it was more likely yesterday, actually, in yesterday's little feature that went through. There was some lively downpours on that, and the conditions were just right for that one. But again, good question.
Yeah. Another good question from Dean Addison, where can we find info on what will be happening with wave heights and tide info relating to what's happening with the storm?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
the wave heights are on the app, I think, or certainly the sea conditions are on the app.
Yeah, I think that's correct, but in terms of actual wave heights, I'm not too sure.
If I'd had more time, I could have prepped them in this, and we could show them on here. But I say it's been a bit of a crazy morning this morning. But that's a good point. We'll be doing more stuff throughout this afternoon. Aidan's going to go live on Facebook pretty much straight after this, so he may be able to put the wave heights in his graphics and show you what they're going to be. But we could also put those out on other social media channels as well. So thank you for your question, Dean. Thank you for suggestion. But I mean, the main thing is I would just stay away from the coast because the waves are going to be big with this storm because it is looking pretty powerful. But thank you.
Yeah, Steve JC, what the feels like temperature's going to be tomorrow? That's another good question because actually those really brisk winds are going to make things feel a lot colder than what the temperatures are actually showing in reality. So not only have we got the strong winds, they're going to make conditions feel very, very cold, but I'm sure you're probably not going to be out and about anyway because there's going to be loads of rain and also snow across Scotland anyway. So it's probably a good advice to stay inside and avoid that wind chill anyway.
Yeah, there will be wind chill. I mean, it's actually going to be quite reasonably mild as this weather system comes in because of where it's coming from. So it's bringing relatively mild air. It's bringing Atlantic air. So it's not going to be cold. But obviously, when you have strong winds like we're going to see, then that will make it feel much colder than the numbers on your thermometer. What's the chance of thunderstorms forming within this storm? Yeah, pretty high. Daniel Wortle, thanks for your question. Yeah, again, pretty high. I would have said a decent chance of seeing some thundery downpours with this, and as it clears away, we'll see some heavy showers following in behind as well. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, question here, should I avoid walking my dog in the woods? That's probably your best bet. Obviously, with the really strong winds, it's likely to cause structural damage. We're likely to see lots of trees falling over, bins flying through streets. I'm sure we'll see all the videos once the storm comes through across social media. So yeah, the advice that we're sort of giving is to stay inside if you can, avoid travelling and avoid walking your dog, particularly in the woods. It
depends where you are, John, really. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are. I just plan it because obviously dogs still need walking, so you can't just leave them inside. So just plan. Think about where you are, look at the warnings, see when the weather's going to be worse for you, and just try and avoid those worst times because obviously dogs still need to get outside. But yeah, the woods is probably not the most sensible.
Yeah, not the best location for a dog walk. Cool. Okay, let's see. What other questions have we got kind of coming through? So what kind of incidents could occur? That's quite a good question. Obviously, storms like this, they can cause quite major impacts at times. So obviously structural damage, as I've already mentioned, we may even see power cuts at times when we see that kind of damage to sort of homes and infrastructure. The strong winds obviously causing very big waves around coastal areas, which is why a lot of our warnings are sort of focused around coast, particularly exposed coastal areas. And with the heavy rain as well, it could cause some flooding in places too. So likely we'll see quite a few impacts from this.
Yeah, I mean, structural damage, so tiles coming down, you know, trees coming down, and they're not in leaf anymore, but they could still easily come down. It takes one tree on a branch of a rail line to cause huge disruption for that rail line. I suspect most of the rail companies will be adapting their timetable, their schedule, particularly in the amber and the red warning areas. But yeah, particularly the red warning area, it's a real threat to life. The waves, but you know, flying debris, structural damage, power cuts are really likely, you know, as trees could fall on power lines, that kind of thing. So there's all manner of potential impacts from these particularly strong winds, but that's not the only thing. There is the rain as well. You know, Storm Darragh caused that flooding in South Wales. There's an amber warning for the rain for parts of South Wales because the ground is saturated, and so extra rainfall there could cause further flooding, and there's some snow as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Got a few questions asking what the weather will be like in Cornwall, what the weather's going to be like in London. In a minute, Alex will go through.
Yeah, should we go up? Shall I go up to the board? Let's have a look at what's going on and give you a kind of overview of where we're looking. Let's start with a satellite image, and I mean this is 5 days worth of satellite footage, so you can see actually Monday the weather started relatively calm. We've had some fine weather at times between these weather systems, but you can almost just envisage the jet stream there just pushing these areas of low pressure, one swirling up to the north. This one was brought the wet and windy weather yesterday, and this is where we're at now with that Storm Darragh just knocking on the door. So we had some spells of wet weather throughout this week. As I say, some fine weather for a time on Tuesday. This weather system moved through on Wednesday, and then we had another one really quickly following on behind last night. So I know a lot of people were woken up by the winds last night. That brought some very strong winds to let's just pause it there. To the Netherlands. You can see again, we did this last week, the hook of cloud going into the hook of Holland, little nasty area of low pressure bringing some very strong winds to the Netherlands and Germany. We were an hour or so ago, the first thing this morning, the calm before the storm, because this is now Storm Darragh, and just look as it's intensifying out to the west. Now, this is really quite interesting because it's not been really rapidly intensifying. It's not what we call a weather bomb. It's not undergoing explosive cyclogenesis. It's been a slow burner, a gradual intensification as this has been moving up towards the UK, and it's already bringing some rain to parts of Northern Ireland, and you can imagine that's going to sweep across the country. But let's look at its development, because that really is quite interesting, how it is forming and how it's interacting with the jet. This jet stream drove this low pressure system on across the Netherlands and Germany, tightly packed isobars, strong winds, and this is how it's interacting now. It's crossed to the colder side of the jet, and it is being pushed along, but it's not really being intensified that rapidly. For it to be rapid cyclogenesis, explosive cyclogenesis, it needs to drop 24 millibars in 24 hours. That's what we saw with Storm Bert, and that is, to be fair, what we often see with these storm systems, explosive cyclogenesis, where they interact with the jet and they rapidly intensify. It is intensifying, but just not that quickly. If we put the numbers on, hopefully this will work. If I put a dot in the middle of there, hopefully you can read that, 985 hectopascals, 985 millibars at 12 o'clock today. Fast forward to 12 o'clock tomorrow, and we're down to 9, maybe a bit lower if I put it in the right spot. If I just, let's delete that. Let's do it in the middle. Oh, no, it's still 978. So we've dropped, what, 7 hectopascals, 7 millibars in 24 hours. So if we actually make it 24 hours, it's not even, there we go, 980. So it's only dropping like a handful of millibars over the next 24 hours, but the isobars are really squeezing together. And that's in part due to this and what's going on with the jet stream. It's actually what's going on with the jet stream out here, this big amplification. And in this ridge, there's a big area of high pressure at the surface, and that is actually intensifying. If we put the pressure on that, you can see that it starts about 1,028, but again, in 24 hours time, it's gone up to 1,037. So that's kind of increasing by 10 hectopascals at the same time as the low is dropping by around about 8 or 9 hectopascals. So it's that change. They're still pretty much the same distance apart, but as that intensifies, that high pressure, the low itself not really intensifying too much, but a little bit,
but it's causing that squeeze because you've got a tighter gradient now across there because that high is built. So it's not just about the low intensifying like it usually is with these low pressure systems. It's actually more about the ridge and the high pressure building behind it because of the amplification of the jet stream. So that's a really interesting feature of this storm. I mean, it doesn't make much difference to the strength of the winds, but that's really quite an interesting meteorological point about why this low is intensifying and generating such strong winds. Rather than it dropping its own pressure, it's being squeezed from behind by that area of high pressure. So I thought that was quite interesting. Jason, the chief meteorologist today, pointed that out a couple of days ago, really, about how it's not really intensifying that much. But it is still going to be a really potent force. I mean, look at the isobars across the chart there. So this is 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. The low itself is moving in here, but it's on this little squeeze here. That's the dangerous part. Always with these low pressures, it's generally this southwestern quadrant where we see the strongest winds. It's the same low, but you know, the isobars up here much further apart. It's always in this kind of quadrant where we see the strongest winds. That's where the isobars are really tightening together. So let's put the winds on as we go through. It's been a bit slow today, this machine. It's been a bit laggy, so apologies for that. But let's put the winds on because they're really quite interesting if we take those off and just look at them. So that's yesterday's system clearing away. This is the wind gust graphic. So you can see those strong winds moving into to the Hook of Holland. Through today, the wind's pretty light, no big issues. But then as we go through those strengthening winds in there, that's where we're going to see those strong winds. So as we go through, actually put that one on, that's better. This is a better one. This is a more high res one to look at. If we just scoot through there, then this is really interesting because that's the centre of the low. So actually the winds across Northern Ireland will be quite light this evening. So the storm, as it passes, almost like the eye of the storm, like in a hurricane, the winds across Northern Ireland will be quite light. If you're going out tonight across Northern Ireland, be aware that the winds will suddenly whip up because at 10, 11 o'clock at night, the winds are going to be really light. But then look at this. If we fast forward to 4 o'clock in the morning, now look at those gusts. 50, 60, potentially up to 70 mile an hour gusts in and around Northern Ireland. And there's this little zone. That's as those isobars really squeeze together. The lows going in here. There are those isobars really pinching together. And those winds, this is why we're concerned. This is why the red warning is in place. You can see those winds, that west coast of Wales, but also down here, heavily populated parts of South Wales, up through to the Bristol Channel. Those winds are really going to pick up as we go through the early hours of the morning. So this is first thing tomorrow morning, and through the early hours, you may well get woken up by these gusts coming in, 60, 70, 80 mile an hour gusts, certainly likely on coast, and as Honor said, potentially 90 mile an hour gusts could occur in this zone, and that's what we've got the red warning for. I actually want to show you this, because this is quite funky. If we just put the winds up on here, this is showing that wind path. This got picked out the Sperrin Mountains here. This is showing the wind gusts in miles an hour for this evening, and just notice how they pick up as that low kind of approaches and moves through. And then you're almost in the eye of the storm and the winds drop right back down again, but woof, suddenly they pick up again. So these are the winds over the mountains, the Sperrin Mountains. So yeah, it's a bit exaggerated, but you get that sense of how the winds will be light and then they'll suddenly whip up. So don't get caught out by that. Try and find Northern Ireland or somewhere closer. Again, not as extreme at these lower levels, but you are going to get that dip, that initial surge of the winds as they pick up through this evening. 6 o'clock, they'll tend to drop down again. Midnight, pretty light winds, and then woof, they're going to pick up again as that storm system moves through. So it's almost like a double whammy. And across into Wales, again, if we pick out somewhere close to the north, you can see those gusts of winds. Again, this is inland, 60, 66 miles an hour. Some on the coast, we might get up to 65, 70 miles an hour. There's the 75 there, look. So yeah, you can see these are the strong winds. So it's that zone, it's that time, first thing tomorrow morning when we're going to see those winds really picking up across those western areas. Any more questions coming in?
Quite a few questions about actually what's going to happen once that storm moves through. Are we going to drag in some colder air once the storm passes? Are we going to see high pressure build?
Yeah,
which is,
that is pretty much what's going to happen. We can zip forward if you want and talk a little bit about what's happening further ahead. If we get through to Monday, then yeah, high pressure is building in. So the storm system comes in, Darragh comes in. It's kind of clearing away by, let's take the jet off, we don't need the jet on. It's pulling away by the time we get to first thing Sunday morning, but notice still tiny patch isobars and the wind's coming in from the north, so that is something we need to keep an eye on. But by the time we get to Monday and Tuesday, high pressure's building in, colder air in place, and next week the winds will be a lot lighter, which means fog and frost are likely to be a bit of an issue as we go through next week, particularly under the centre of the high across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So yeah, in there early next week, frost and fog. But thankfully, once this storm system is out of the way, then the weather calms down a little bit because the jet kind of moves up there, it angles back down here, but generally allowing the high that's causing the squeeze in the isobars to come and sit over us, and we'll have calmer weather for most of next week. Actually, high pressure looks like being in control. Another thing I want to show about the winds, which I didn't highlight on this one, is this zone here. So as the storm comes in, yeah, I've talked about the winds, that peak of the winds in here, but notice here as well, as the storm, you can see there's the low in there, notice these winds as well, coming in from the north or northeast, across northeast Scotland down the eastern side of England. Those winds are going to get quite lively. So that's not a red warning, but we do have warnings in place covering these winds coming down that eastern side of England, and northerly wind as well. So it's an unusual wind direction. So that can cause some problems. Doesn't necessarily have to be as strong, but still potentially some issues from that system as it comes through. Let's look at the warnings then for the wind. So we've got these wind warnings in place, that broad yellow wind warning covering most of England and Wales for the storm system coming in. And we've got this amber wind warning for Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales, southwest England, southwest Scotland, and coastal areas of northwest England as well, and the Liverpool Bay area. And then a broad yellow warning covering those winds as the storm moves through across much of England and Wales and into the south. So yeah, lots of warnings are in place. Do check out the website for more details on all of those.
Yes, because we've had a few questions about what actually the warnings are going to do towards the east and southeast, which you've covered. But yeah, it's important not to focus too much on just the amber and red warnings, because actually there is quite a widespread yellow wind warning out as well. So it's going to be a blustery day for many people over the weekend.
Yes, yeah, and you know, these kind of winds we're talking about 40, 50, potentially 60 mile an hour gusts, they could cause some issues. So, you know, think about your Christmas decorations, if you've got them up outside.
Yeah, that's a good point,
can you tie them down? Can you take them in? Yeah. You know, especially in those amber and red areas. But this weather system really does have the potential to cause widespread problems. So just think about what you're planning tomorrow and double check before you head anywhere that, you know, that everything's open and that, you know, whatever you're up to isn't going to be impacted by the weather.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple of people asking actually for the details on the warning. So shall we take a look at the rest of them as well?
Yeah, we can get the rain warnings are here. Rain, not just rain as well, the snow. There's a snow warning in place across Scotland as that system comes in. So we've got yellow rain warnings for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, a good chunk of Wales, and then we've got this amber rain warning for parts of South Wales, where of course we had the flooding a couple of weeks ago. So again, the potential for serious flooding in that part of the world. Rainfall totals, you know, not especially huge because the system will move through, but of course because it's been wet, time of year, they could cause some flooding, and of course flooding is pretty grim. So that's why we've got that amber warning in place. We work very closely here with the Environment Agency, Natural Resources Wales, to focus in on the areas that, you know, we focus what's coming out of the sky, and that goes into the models depending on river catchment areas and makes predictions based on that and antecedent conditions, what's been happening already. So that's one of the key factors about that amber rain warning across the south. Let's look at the rain actually as it moves in. Come on, there we go. This is the system, this is Darragh, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Bits and bobs of rain in the west, some quite heavy rain already heading into Northern Ireland. It moves through northwards and it hits, and that's where we're going to see the snow. So the A9 in particular this evening, so if you're heading across Scotland, the A9, you know, much of that's going to be blizzards with the strong wind and the heavy snow. But yeah, anywhere above about 300 metres, we could see some problems with the snow really building up as well. Grampians and the Cairngorms in particular. So the higher routes there likely to see some significant snow as that moves through. It's a pretty wet night for most as well, so if you are heading out, just bear that in mind. And then it all continues to move through, and then we see this kind of backwash There's the low pressure, the front's diving in here, so as well as those strong winds, that heavy rain coming in, pulses of heavy rain across southern Scotland and across Wales. So that's where that rain is going to be at its heaviest first thing tomorrow morning. Actually, as we go through the day, gone too far. As we go through the day, actually many western areas will turn a lot drier. Still windy, but those damaging gusts should have eased by the afternoon. Still very windy everywhere, and then actually it's pretty grim down that eastern side through Saturday evening and into Sunday morning as well. So again, something we need to watch as that weather system moves through, just the strength of the wind down that eastern side as well. And then it all finally starts to ebb away by the time we get to Sunday afternoon. And then we start to see the winds coming in from the northeast. That's where it's going to be colder, but you can see the ridge of high pressure, the lighter winds are in here. So as we go through Sunday night and into Monday, it's going to be frost and fog that we see in these clearer zones up there. Any more questions coming in?
Let's have a look. So obviously we know that kind of wet and windy weather is on its way. A couple of people asking sort of when the winds are going to calm down. So we've had a question from Ames Mason, hopefully I've said that right. When on Saturday will the winds calm in the Bristol area?
Oh, I don't think they'll ever go calm on Saturday. They probably won't calm until about
Still
Monday, I would have thought,
yeah.
in the Bristol area. This chart shows it quite nicely, actually, I think, if we go through. So there's the storm system moving through. There are those strong gusts in the Bristol areas on Saturday. So the red warning is until 11 a.m.
Let's double check.
I think.
Yes.
I think the red, and then the
12 tomorrow.
So, even at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's still going to be quite lively. The wind's coming down from the north, but they don't really calm down until that ridge of high pressure moves in, which isn't really until kind of Monday morning. Even then, actually, the isobar is still quite tight across the south. So yeah, the winds won't really die down. They'll be switching direction and they won't be as dangerous. They won't be as damaging for sure, but they don't really calm down. Even early part of next week along that south coast, there'll be quite cold wind, I suspect, coming in, an easterly wind coming in across the south coast. That's going to bring a pretty big chill. So the winds don't really calm down in Bristol until at least the early part of next week, but the damaging winds in that area likely Friday night and Saturday morning.
Yeah, I mean, help get your washing dry if you're hanging outside. Great for kite flying.
Not sure.
You might lose a kite.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to be.
Another question here from Henners: has there been a red warning of wind so far this year?
There was, I think, in northern Scotland, I forget the name of the storms, we did issue a red, I think, right at the start of the year, potentially in January.
Yes.
But then the one before that was Storm Eunice. Across the south, it's the first red warning for wind since Storm Eunice, which was in February 2022. And we had part of those 3 storms in a week, which I remember very well.
Yeah. Here's a more technical question for you, Alex, from Lee Johnson. Is the cold in the US turbocharging the jet?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I haven't looked at that, but we can have a quick look at it, I guess. That could well be the case. Well, he says that. The screen really is being very slow today. It doesn't want to go too fast. So yeah, I mean, that will help. Obviously, the jet stream is driven by contrasts in temperature. So if we put the temperature profile on, whoa, I've gone the wrong there, haven't I? That's the wrong temperature profile. That's the temperature profile. Oh, look at the pretty colours. So yeah, what we can say here is this cold plunge coming down across the United States and the warmer air here, and it's that contrast which is charging the jet, is giving the jet some welly and forcing it to go up. So yeah, it is a kind of knock-on sequence that's pushing the jet stream further north, allowing that area of high pressure to build stronger, which is then creating that squeeze on the isobars that we saw earlier behind Storm Darragh. So yeah, it is definitely influencing things, that really cold air, because it's the contrast between the cold and the warm that energizes the jet stream. So that's kind of what's happening there. Good question.
Yeah, that was a good one, and kind of sort of linked to that as well. Isaac Shaw asking if you could explain sort of a bit more of the science behind the lows deepening and why the isobars start to pop out as well.
Okay, so, let's do that. We did a deep dive on jet streams and that kind of thing. a year or so ago, so you can check that out if you want. We might be able to put it in the chat if that's a challenge for Emma, who's on the chat. She might be able to find that deep dive about jet streams and put it in. But let's see. Well, I'll take the temperatures off because we don't need it for that. But yeah, when you've got a jet stream like this, it's not consistent. It's not the same all the way through. It kind of, you have these streaks, these pulses of jets where they're particularly strong. A little extra push, a little extra core of jet there. And where they're easing off, on this side, that's called a left exit, and that is a real development area for low pressure systems, because in this left exit, the air is slowing down because you've got the speed here, and then it's slowing down as it exits, and that actually generates divergence high in the sky where the jet stream is. It creates the air flowing out at these levels up here, and that actually pushes the air up or sucks the air up, so it generates loft, it generates air rising, and that helps to spin the low pressure up at the surface. And the same kind of happens at a right entrance as well. So right entrance to these jets or a left exit are breeding grounds for areas of low pressure due to the dynamics and the way the atmosphere is. If you go the opposite side, so the right entrance, the opposite is true, and the left entrance, the right exit, sorry, the opposite is true. So it's the left exit or the right entrance, they're breeding grounds for the areas of low pressure. And it's all to do with the dynamics of the jet stream accelerating and then decelerating here, creating divergence. The air is diverging aloft, and when the air is separating or going away aloft, it's got to get the air back from somewhere, because Mother Nature likes a balance. So it sucks the air up from below, and that generates lower pressure at the surface.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense.
Good question, excellent answer.
Thanks, Anna. But there is, yeah, I did a whole deep dive on that, so go and check out our deep dives. And if you search for a jet stream, then I think it was in the title around that, so there's more on that. I did a little drawing and everything, which I'm not brave enough to do here for now.
That sounds like worth a watch. Just your art skills.
Yeah, something like that.
Cool. Another question here: is this storm going to be as bad as the 1987 storm? Well, I guess we don't fully know the impacts until it's gone through, and then we kind of take a look back, don't we? But it's definitely going to be quite a significant storm, I think, with quite incredible wind speeds by the time we finish the weekend as well. Yeah,
always hard to compare storms, particularly when this one hasn't happened. Obviously, at the end of it, we'll do a wash up, and you can compare wind speeds, wind gusts. It does look like the worst impacts of this one are going to be in a different place. The one from 87 obviously affected the southeast of England, and maybe not as resilient across the southeast of England to the kind of wind speeds that we'll see here, whereas obviously this is happening across more coastal areas. But certainly, you know, this is going to be a dangerous storm, and that's why we've got a red warning in place. Of course, back in 87 we didn't have the warning system. It's one of the reasons we do have a warning system now, because of that 87 storm. So the warning system has been improved a lot since then. So it's really hard to compare. This isn't a rapid deepener, as I've already talked about, like the 87 one was, and that did have a sting jet on the back of it as well. That was one of the problems with it. So that was a much more intensified much more rapidly than this one did, and that was part of the issue. This is more slow burner, but the ridge coming in behind it intensifying the winds on it. So yeah, different beasts. Similar kind of wind strengths probably, but you know, the impacts are always different storms depending on the time. You know, one of the good things about the 87 storm was the time it hit through the early hours of the morning. This one kind of similar as well. It's going to be, but this one's still be around on a Saturday morning, whereas the 87 was a weekday morning as well. So it's really hard to compare these storms. Everyone's different, and the impacts are always different depending on a number of factors. But yeah. Really interesting question.
Exactly. Adam Robert Hegarty says, I'm a train driver, and if the wind speed gets too strong, they do put a blanket speed restriction on, so trains run at lower levels, or they get delayed or cancelled, and we are expecting quite a lot of that over the weekend as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. Hopefully, you know, we named the storm yesterday. We've been flagging the wet and windy weather. We work closely with transport networks as well. So, you know, the train companies will be aware of this, and they'll be making plans accordingly. So again, if you do have, my wife's supposed to be on a train tomorrow going to Christmas market, and I told her yesterday I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, if you do have plans, then double check before you set off, because the train companies are, you know, they handle these situations. We work closely with them, and they'll be putting those kind of restrictions on, and that's the reason why. Highways network as well, similarly, there's a good chance that the 7 crossings, the bridges between Wales and England, both of them could be closed tomorrow as well. So again, just think about your travel plans and what you're up to tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll just do a few more questions and I think we'll draw this live to a close. But Alex Collins says, is there the possibility of the red and amber warnings being expanded?
I mean, always a chance. We're obviously monitoring the situation. The chief meteorologist, deputy chief meteorologist, working upstairs here. It's a 365 days a year, 24-hour a day operation. So they'll be working shifts. They'll be constantly monitoring. We have updated all of the warnings this morning. They've all been looked at. They've all been tweaked. New ones have been issued. So I wouldn't expect any changes in the coming hours. But when a new computer model run comes in and we look at the data again, if it looks more severe or slightly different tweak, it's a developing situation. It could be a little further south, could be a little further north. So warnings may need to be tweaked. But generally speaking, try and get them out in the morning. So they're all issued now. Obviously, they'll be constantly monitored, but I wouldn't expect any changes for certainly into this afternoon. But it is ongoing, and once we really see the eye of the storm and the actual effects, then those warnings may need to be tweaked. So yeah, worth keeping up to date with the forecast. Yeah,
definitely. This is an interesting question as well, actually, from Linus. Will there be a new record wind power generation? But I found this out since this job actually. The winds can be too strong, can't they, for any kind of wind sort of potential energy. So it's probably likely that actually, particularly western areas, the winds are actually going to be too strong.
Yeah, that's very true. They have to shut them down when they get over a certain amount because it becomes dangerous. So yeah, there is a limit. I think Aidan knows. Maybe you ask that on the Facebook Live, when Aidan goes live on Facebook in a bit, ask him because he'll know, he knows that kind of stuff. But there is a limit where basically they have to shut them down or that they're just not as efficient. So yeah, it's unlikely because it will probably be too strong, these winds, for that. It's probably been a pretty good week for wind generation generally because it's been a windy week. We've seen spells of these coming through. But yeah, any one given day, you need a more consistent number that's within that threshold where they work for it to be probably the record-breaking wind.
Exactly. Right, one more question. Let's see who will be the lucky winner.
Here we go.
So Nick O'Connell, this is more localised forecast. How high are the winds going to be for Barrow-in-Furness in Whitehaven, Cumbria?
That's a good question. Let's have a look at those. See if the board's. It's been very slow today, isn't it?
It's all the warnings.
It is all the warnings. It doesn't like it, does it? It doesn't like it at all. We'll get this sorted for next week. Would help if I pressed the right button. Turn that one off. That one on. Barrow-in-Furness.
Yeah.
And Whitehaven.
Whitehaven, yeah.
So we want to be up here, don't we? If I zoom in, will any towns come on across Cumbria? So we're up here, aren't we? Come on, geography's not that good. If I zoom in further, will Whitehaven appear? No, it's not going to, is it? But we're in here, basically. So let's take a look at those winds as they pick up. So yeah, you're not really... They're the strongest winds Saturday morning, actually, as that low comes through. So those gusts on the coast, you're in the amber warning area, so I think gusts, particularly on the coast, 50, 60 miles an hour, potentially 70 miles an hour in that zone. And the peak will probably be tomorrow morning into the early part of the afternoon along that coastal strip. You, in that wind direction, get a little bit of shelter from Scotland. It's more of a kind of westerly where you see the strongest winds. So there will be subtle differences from who sees the strongest winds. But yeah, you're probably talking 50, 60 miles an hour, I would have thought, for that part of the world.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, obviously we're looking at a very hazardous weekend ahead. Still lots of warnings in force. As we've said, kind of make sure you stay updated on our website, and we'll try and update you as much as we can across all our social media channels for any updates to those. But yeah, we're expecting heavy rain, very strong winds, and some snow in Scotland. So a very unsettled weekend ahead.
Yeah, please do share this, let people know that we're on here. It's been a bit different this week. I say we haven't done the quiz, so apologies for that, but we'll maybe back to normal service next week. I think it's Aidan and I doing it next week.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I did prepare a quiz, so maybe I'll send it to Aidan for next week. So it doesn't go to waste.
Next week. But yes, please do let everyone know. As I say, Aidan's going to go live on Facebook in a minute or shortly once we've rejig the studio a little bit, so check out that, ask him any questions that you want. I'll go live on TikTok this afternoon as well, but make sure you're following us across social media and just let everyone know. Really, I mean, the whole point of the Met Office is to help people stay safe and thrive, enjoy the weather when it's suitable, but also stay safe when it is as potentially dangerous as it is this weekend. So please
do share the love. Let everyone know. Tell them to keep up to date with Met Office forecasts. Listen to all the advice, people like the RNLI, Coast Guard Agency, all those kind of people. And just think about your plans for this weekend. Do you need to modify them? Could you do something a bit different? Do you need to change the timing based on the weather forecast? Because this is a really serious event. We don't issue red warnings lightly. We don't issue amber warnings lightly. So yeah, just do bear that in mind. This is potentially a pretty serious event, pretty serious storm coming in. So share the love. Let everyone know. Let's help to keep everyone safe.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, do please give this video a thumbs up, and also make sure you share it. You can still watch it, even though we're live now. You can still watch it after we're not live anymore too. So
keep the questions coming in as well, because we do go over them, and we may be able to answer it next week as well. So keep the comments, keep your chat coming in as well. That would be brilliant.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for those who sent in your questions. And as we say, you can still send some in more if you would like. But that's it for this week. We'll be back again next Friday at 12:15. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Make sure you stay safe out there. Bye bye for now.
Bye bye.